Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, welcome, if a little belatedly, to our Saturday gathering to read and discuss Swami Prabhupadananda's book, How to Know God, his translation and interpretation of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Before we start, is there anything that anyone would like to offer, or any question that might want to be asked based on what we've read and discussed previously? All right. And again, thank you, Somesh, for being alert to the fact that I was not being alert, that I was not being present, and gotten involved in doing something else, and just didn't mind the time. So, the Swami just got through saying, just repeat some negative words with negative associations, and you will find that your mood will be changed because of the associations connected with that word. Similarly, the name of God will change the climate of your mind. It cannot do otherwise. And the reason is very simple. We are beings made of vibration. This is very clear not only from what Vasishta told Rama in the Vasishta Yoga Sutras, Vasishta Yoga Sutras, but also from the findings of modern quantum physics. There is nothing but vibration, various fields of vibration in endless combinations. And we, this stardust spacesuit that is our garment, is such. And so when we create a different vibration within this garment, it changes. It changes ultimately, if we do it persistently with intensity, it changes the nature of the garment itself. It purifies it, as Chaitanya says. We'll talk about this more extensively tomorrow morning during the talk titled Something Wrong with Your Mantra. Before we move on, is there any comment or question about that principle, that chanting the name of the Lord really will change things for you? Okay, the Swami goes on to say, in the Hindu scriptures, we often find the phrase, to take refuge in his name. See also the book of Proverbs. It gives the chapter and verse. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteousness runneth into it. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. The refuge of the name. This phrase, which at first may sound rather too poetical, comes to have a very real and literal significance in our spiritual life. So I'm going to read that again. In the Hindu scriptures, we often find the phrase, to take refuge in his name. See also the book of Proverbs. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. This phrase, which at first may sound rather too poetical, comes to have a very real and literal significance in our spiritual life. When the mind is so violently disturbed by pain or fear or the necessities of some physical emergency, that it cannot possibly be used for meditation or even rational thought, there is still one thing that you can always do. You can repeat his name over and over. You can hold fast to that throughout all the tumult. Once you have really tested and proved the power of the Holy Word, you will rely upon it increasingly. Through constant practice of the repetition, it becomes automatic. Through constant practice, the repetition becomes automatic. It no longer has to be consciously willed. It is rather like the thermostat of a water heater or refrigerator. It is rather like the thermostat of a water heater or a refrigerator. Whenever the mind reaches an undesirable temperature, you will find that the repetition begins of itself and continues as long as it is necessary. Now, this is such a powerful assertion by the Swami, both that there is tremendous power in the name and that by regular and energetic repetition of the name, as Patanjali says, the energetic get more out of this. This happens. It becomes a refuge. It is available to you when all else seems to be unavailable to you, rational thought even, let alone concentration and meditation. You have recourse to the repetition of the name, and that it ultimately becomes, as the Swami said, like the thermostat on a refrigerator or water heater. When necessary, it emerges automatically. Is there any thought, concern, comment, question about any of that?
Brother, there's the story of Jekyll and Hyde, and it almost seems like a real life story. And like when you are like Jekyllish, I guess the mantra, is it more sort of powerful to actually just speak it like physically with a sound?
Yes, when you are, as you said, very poetically yourself, when you are Jekylish. Yes, as a matter of fact, Swami Prabhupada told us there are times when you have to go to a place where no one can hear you and shout your mantra out loud, so that you have the feedback loop of hearing yourself shouting it, and it then begins to overcome whatever terrible state of mind you are in that caused you to take this action of going someplace where no one can hear you. Now, normally we repeat the name or the mantra, whatever. We may repeat it out loud, but we'll repeat it quietly in a private place. Then we take it to where we're not actually vocalizing it out loud. We're just saying it, and the lips are moving. The throat is doing what it does. And then ultimately we take it into our hearts and repeat it simply there. Some people say mentally. It's not really mentally. It's in the heart, silently. But that's when the mind is capable of that kind of concentration and meditation. But as you said very aptly, Rajiv, when you are Jekylish, and we all are capable of this Jekyll and Hyde duality. When you are Jekylish, you may need to say the mantra out loud, or as Swami Prabhupada says, go somewhere where you can't be heard and shout it out loud. Christopher Isherwood would, because of where he lived, he could go to a place where a train would roar by, and he would stand under the railroad bridge and shout it. This is said to be a true story. I didn't hear it from his lips, but I did hear it from people who knew him. So thank you, Rajiv, very aptly contributed. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes,
I totally agree with that. For myself, through constant practice, it does become automatic. Unconsciously, it's going on, just like a thermostat, exactly like he said. But you have to do regular practice. There's no side cuts or shortcuts.
To achieve that state,
Yes.
it's necessary to do regular practice.
Definitely.
But there is no compulsion for anyone to do regular practice.
Right.
Only if they want to have this refuge.
That's true.
That they will do what's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And to those of you who are still having some difficulty with regular practice, and I just had a long conversation with someone who came to visit yesterday who is in that state, so I know there are some.
It takes a long time.
Sri Krishna is very clear about this in the Gita. He doesn't try to say, oh, it's easy. No, it's not easy. He says, Krishna's words, this is maybe a paraphrase, but it's very close. Krishna says, sour toil at first.
That's right.
And then Amrita, the nectar of immortality.
Totally agree.
So sour toil at first, and then the nectar of immortality. This is what the name is. And this we'll hear from the Swami. First, he's talking about, or at least in this context, he's talking about what it is when you really need it. And then with regular practice, it becomes like a thermostat and just switches on. It's actually going on at all times in your mind after you've been practicing for a long time.
That's right.
It just comes to your awareness when you want it or need it.
Yes.
So thank you, Haima.
Thank you, Brother Shankar. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, Rajiv had mentioned Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I actually had a bipolar person in my life, and that was a true Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. She would go from one extreme to another. You had mentioned repeating the mantra aloud. I think perhaps that's one of the reasons Sri Krishna recommends that in the Bhagavad Gita that the yogi should live alone, because when you live alone, you know, I'm living alone now, and you can repeat your mantra out loud and meditate, and nobody gives you any grief. It's great. So I just a thought there, and a closing thought on the Swami who's giving us these teachings. I think he's such a great Swami for the West because he's quoting Proverbs, which I've always liked. Even before I became a spiritual person, I always liked Proverbs. And he says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. Now that actually has meaning to me. So
Yes.
yeah, it's like taking refuge in the Lord. I never got that one before today. That's good.
Thank you, Brahmadas. Yes, all of that is true. And it is true that both Patanjali and Sri Krishna recommend that the really committed yogi live alone or live in a monastic community. Though this doesn't mean that householders can't do these things. They most emphatically can. But it is easier when you don't have anyone else with whom you need to compromise.
Exactly.
And the joy of repeating the name out loud comes from actually hearing it in the physical sense. And the people who study brains and brain waves and so on say that there is a feedback loop, that it strengthens and strengthens and strengthens. And this is one of the reasons you'll hear, particularly you hear Buddhist monks chanting together. You know, it's hard to distinguish the words because they're not necessarily pronouncing them very clearly.
I
They
love
know
those
what they're saying.
chantings.
Yeah, but it is, if you listen to it, you find it very soothing. And there's no way not to find it soothing because we are beings made of vibration. And that very powerful vibration that they're generating is soothing to your body-mind complex, your antakarana.
It is. And thoughts are vibrations too, aren't they?
Oh, they certainly, everything. This is what, all you have to do is.
No, you're not telling anyone your thoughts. You're still creating the vibrations.
Well, this is why people who are sensitive enough in that psychic sense can read other people's thoughts. Of course, again, read Swami Vivekananda's Powers of the Mind. But if you want to know what I mean by the quantum physicists' assertions about the nature of reality, all you have to do is look up the words Don Lincoln, head of Fermilab. Don Lincoln, like the President Lincoln, head of Fermilab, and read what he has to say. Or you can just find what he has to say in the notes for various talks that have been given from here, where he's quoted. Just go to the search engine for the archive of the talks and type in Don Lincoln. And long quotes are given from him about the nature of the reality in which we live as being nothing more than vibration, which gives you some sense of awe and wonder at this incredible spacesuit that we wear that turns all of that vibration into what appears to be solid reality outside of us. And yet, the most elementary physics will tell you that there's nothing here, even in this seemingly solid table. then more than 90% vibration that is not material, and only less than 10% of vibration that does translate to us as materiality. It's truly amazing. Awesome.
It is.
Hello, Cindy. What? Yes.
Just kind of what you were talking about right there. I was thinking yesterday and this morning about how, everything is one that has become many, but the many is this sort of all these particles and waves. Okay. But every apparent form, us, rocks, clouds, everything is a highly limited version of that.
Yes. Precisely.
The limitations allow us to have the form that we have.
Yes. As Swami Yogeshananda would teach his students, consciousness is primary and is not plural. How does that then translate into what we see? Just as Cindy pointed out, as various kinds of limitation. And it is these, this is the genius of Sankhya. It's the Sankhya philosophy, which talks about the limitations being in three primary forms: the gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva. They are not things in and of themselves, but they create these limitations. They create the other cosmic principles. There are 24 cosmic principles, most of which are devolved from the actions of the gunas. And Sankhya talks about this in a way that makes great sense to the left mind. Thank you, Cindy. Limitations. That's it. This is a cell phone limitation. Much has been done with all the vibrations that this embodies to create cell phone limitation. But it has wondrous capabilities, as we all know. So,
And hiding behind those limitations is the one. But I also
is mother.
yes. But that's a limitation to say mother. But I did want to address what we were actually talking about, which was mantra and saying a mantra. And early practice, spiritual practice, if you have a mantra, yes, I mean, it's like practicing anything else. At first, when you learn to play the guitar, your fingers hurt and you whine and moan, but you do, and I just don't know if I can do this, and I'm not getting anywhere. And it's the same practicing with anything. You have to get through the pain of the sour toil until you start to see results, but you will if you keep doing it. And then as the months and years go by, we've talked about this. I know Balakrishna has mentioned just sometimes, just letting the mantra be silent and being in that space.
Yeah.
But that usually comes because someone has done the mantra practice. And as far as saying the mantra, when we're having a crisis, anybody, no matter how far along your spiritual path you are, we all have crises that suddenly throw everything out the window, like Ram Dass when he had a stroke. It was suddenly like, oh my gosh, then even the most practiced who don't even have to say their mantra anymore, they just can go close your eyes and go into that space. I mean, this is from my experience. Like when I'm scared all of a sudden or something is disturbing me, saying your mantra, like getting loud about it, will take you back out of that fearful space. because you can't.
Getting
Yeah,
getting loud about it. I love it.
yeah, or yelling or crying or all that. But so the mantra, just to say, yes, I'm agreeing. The mantra is very powerful, and very important early on to practice until you have results, and then you'll keep doing it, just like with anything else. If you get results, you keep doing it.
Yeah, because you get the joy out of
But I think
Well,
in addition to all those benefits, Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if you think about me at the last minute, you will reach me.
it. Yes.
The only way to think about him at the last minute.
Yes, well, you have to be thinking about him a lot of
All
minutes
the
before
time.
that.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Balakrishna. Absolutely true.
brother, I also felt like there is this tapasya aspect of it where you sit down and repeat the mantra, but I think sometimes it makes it really like feel as if it's like a job. And what I personally found is like, okay, I'll just sit down. I don't want anything. I just don't want anything, like not even like spiritual growth or whatever, just drop it and focus on your breathing and synchronize the mantra with the breathing and just enjoy it. Like, you don't have to get anywhere. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to get the spiritual power of it or whatever. And it makes it pleasant. And then, maybe you don't need to even do it while sitting. I mean, obviously there is a commitment that's separate, but
Well, Rajiv, you're so right. There's sometimes it just feels like a job. And one morning in the Hollywood Temple, after the morning services and everything was finished and before breakfast, I said to Swami Sarvadevananda, Swami, for the last few days, nothing. I do, and then it's just, I characterize it as mud mind, just like slogging through deep mud in a swamp. And he said, pay no attention to it, pay no attention to it. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing your practice, and it will change. And it did indeed change. And I've found that over time, over the many years since I had that conversation with the Swami, the mud mind will return, a kind of dryness, a kind of, just like you said, Rajiv, it just seems like a job to do it. But then in a very short period, a few days at the most, and what Swami Vivekananda says, so everything is in a waveform. Once again, this vibration, everything is in a waveform. We go down into these troughs. And he says, what are you doing? You're gathering energy so that the next wave, the next peak is higher. And as the statisticians put it, the trend line is upward. Slowly and slowly, the trend line is upward. Thank you, Rajiv. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
sometimes when I have difficulty getting started with the mantra, I find that listening to devotional music, whether it's the artis or some other bhajans on YouTube, settles my mind down to the point where I can transition into the mantra. But then
Yes.
again, there are times when all I want to do is listen to the music, and then
Yes.
it goes, but
Well, we have to, if we're going to get the benefit of the mantra, we don't have to do anything. But if we're going to get the benefit of the mantra, we have to separate ourselves even from that very high form of sensual pleasure of listening to the music. And I have a recommendation, maybe some of you have already heard it. You can find on YouTube a piece by Tchaikovsky, the Russian composer. It's called Hymns of the Cherubim. Hymns of the Cherubim. You can find it on YouTube. And if you need some soothing music I highly recommend that. It has no words that you can understand because it's sung in Russian, but it really doesn't matter at all. It is such a masterful piece of music. It's a traditional Russian Orthodox piece, but this is a setting of that piece by Tchaikovsky. And it is surpassingly beautiful and soothing. So thank you, Swam. Yes, sometimes listening to music definitely will calm us down. And
It also gives
it
us
can't
energy,
be
brother.
Rajasic music. What did you say, Rajiv? I'm sorry.
It can also give us like energy. What I've felt is sometimes we are so like dumb and lethargic and lazy and like and and
Yes.
and then like if you put on music and especially like I heard the Tchaikovsky music, and I have like similar music like that, and it sort of brings up the energy in you, and you can you really feel that that energy or the current, right? And then you can use that in your meditation.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, what you described, this state that you said you characterize as this lazy, dumb, that's just tamas. It's just, and this is one of the reasons to look into Sankhya. The three gunas are always there, and one is always predominant, but it doesn't mean it needs to remain predominant. You can use music, which particularly these tremendously beautiful forms of music, they're sattvic. They're terrifically sattvic. And they overcome, they then bring sattva to the predominant position. And so that's why it's so helpful and useful to us. These are all tools. These are all tools. Notice that music is a form of vibration. I mean, that's all it is. Whether it be vocal or instrumental, it is vibration. And it is, as Swami Vivekananda said, music is the highest form of art. And for those who understand it, the highest form of worship. So anything else from anyone before we read on? Okay. And here we've already addressed this a little bit when discussing what we've been discussing about the mantra. The Swami says, mere repetition of God's name is of course insufficient. As Patanjali points out, we must also meditate upon its meaning. Now, meditation on something's meaning is in three parts. First, contemplation, then concentration on some aspect of what our contemplation has revealed to us, so that the mind becomes more one-pointed, and then that slowly translates into meditation. And according to Patanjali's summation of what happens when you do this, then the thing in itself is revealed to you. The inner, the subtle, the essence is revealed to you. So as Patanjali points out, we must also meditate upon the meaning. But the one process follows naturally upon the other. If we persevere in our repetition, it will lead us inevitably into meditation. Now, again, this is a bald-faced, straight-out, unqualified assertion. If we persevere in our repetition, it will lead us inevitably into meditation. Holy Mother was asked about this. She says, well, Mother, I don't seem to be able to do anything but repeat the mantra mechanically. Will it do me any good? And she said, it does not matter if you jump into the water or are pushed. You still get wet. So she was saying, yes, it will do you good even if you repeat it mechanically. Because, as the Swami says, it inevitably will lead us into meditation, but only if one is persevering. Only if we persevere. If we persevere in our repetition, it will lead us inevitably into meditation. And of course, Haima gestured to this earlier, saying, that in her experience, this is what has happened, but only because she did struggle through that sour toil period into what comes afterwards. Gradually, our confused reverie will give way to concentrated thought. How does this happen? We're repeating the mantra, thoughts intrude. We set aside the thoughts. We don't repress them. We simply say, not now, and return to the mantra. This happens again. We return to the mantra. This happens again. We return to the mantra. But slowly and slowly, the interruptions come less frequently. The periods of the repetition of the mantra lengthen. Ultimately, our breathing slows. Breathing and thought, the prana, are associated. Our breathing slows. The mantra becomes more predominant. The thoughts become less. As a matter of fact, we seem to sink below them. They're still there. If we do give them our attention for a moment, we can see they're still there. But they're infrequent. They're not intrusive. And so slowly and slowly, the mantra becomes predominant. Gradually, our confused reverie will give way to concentrated thought. We cannot long continue to repeat any word without beginning to think about the reality which it represents. That is the nature of the mind. We cannot continue to repeat any word without beginning to think about the reality which it represents. Unless we are far advanced in spiritual practice, this concentration will not be maintained for more than a few moments. The mind will slip back into reverie again. This is the process that I was just describing. But it will be a higher kind of reverie, a reverie dominated by sattva rather than rajas or tamas. And if you do this, you will find the absolute truth of it. This is why the Swami said, occasionally you have to say your mantra out loud, or even go somewhere where you can't be heard and shout it, because it will inevitably change your mood. And whatever it was, in some rajasic state or whatever, it will give way to sattva. And the name, perpetually uttered within it, will be like a gentle plucking at our sleeve, demanding and finally recapturing our attention. And we can be more deliberate about it than that. After you've been practicing a while, you simply are able to say no to the thoughts. It isn't precisely ignoring them. You just say, not now. not now. If it's something that needs to be taken care of, I'll take care of it later. Right now, I'm doing this. And that's the thoughts in the beginning. And then, as I say, slowly and slowly, the thoughts become less evident. And ultimately, as you continue practice, your breathing actually stops. You don't know it. It's not that you are aware that your breathing has stopped. You become aware that your breathing has stopped as it starts again. It'll usually come either because suddenly you're aware of the mantra again, or some thought has intruded. And you just become aware, oh, you're not aware of time passing, you're not aware of your body. So any comments or questions about any of that? Anything at all?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
what are some examples of reverie dominated by sattva?
When spontaneously what you have read or experienced, well, let's just say that you had a sweet experience of Swami Sarvadevananda when he was here, as many people did. Intensely sweet, because that's who he is. So you're practicing, and something triggers this memory of being with Swami Sarvadevananda. Something he said to you, some gesture he made, his putting those relics on your head, whatever it is that, and so there'll be a few moments thinking about him. Or you've been reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and some particularly touching or funny incident was described, and that will come back. You can come up with many, many other instances, but it's something that carries your mind to a higher place than a reverie about what it is that the next day is going to contain in terms of onerous duties, or how tired you are because of all of the work you've done, and your trigger finger hurts, and I mean, these are all lower. There's not anything wrong with them. They're just not as productive of a higher state of awareness. Does that get it?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
For those of us who were in Swami Sarvadevananda's presence when he was here, I mean, the reveries of that are bound to return. Mm-hmm. Not a day goes by that Aaron and I don't discuss that in one way or another. The glow is still with us.
Yes, that happened to me as well. And I was having such happy thoughts about the Swami's visit that I actually phoned him and started talking to him, even though I know he's busy. And he was glad.
No, he doesn't mind that at all, dear.
No, he was glad to hear from me. I could tell he enjoyed
yes,
talking.
he's glad to hear from all of us. As busy as he is, he loves that someone reaches out to him, and because he's just overflowing with love these days. He's just overflowing with love. He's not, it's really quite remarkable. Anything else from anyone?
Sometimes during meditation, I'll hear I'll really hear Mozart's 40th Symphony or some great work of music in my mind and start appreciating it on a different level. Would you call that reverie?
Oh, yes, that's a reverie.
Yeah.
That's absolutely a reverie.
But then I'm forgetting my mantra and thinking about
this
the music.
This is when we understand what Swami Vivekananda meant when he said music is the highest form of worship. Music can carry us very far. It's interesting. Gustavo Dudamel, the great conductor and music director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra, which is acknowledged now to be the best Philharmonic orchestra in the United States. And here's perhaps one of the reasons why. Gustavo Dudamel, being interviewed, was asked, well, when you are conducting, this was particularly about Beethoven's Ninth, but the question was general. When you are conducting, what is in your mind? What are you thinking of? And Dudamel did not have a pat answer. He didn't have a ready answer. He thought a few moments and said, well, how to make each note sacred. And if you listen to the recordings of him conducting Beethoven's Ninth, and note when you do watch those on YouTube, that he
Oh, I have
has,
watched it. It's awesome. It's fun. I have watched that one, by the way, Beethoven's Ninth.
and if you take note, you will see he has no score in front of him. He
Nope.
knows the entire
Nope.
symphony.
He's doing it all by memory.
And it's a long symphony. You know, there are a number of other things that you can watch him conduct where there is no score. So this music, some people regularly, when they practice meditation, they will hear music. They'll hear Krishna's flute. They think of it as Krishna's flute anyway. They hear a flute playing, or they hear the sound of gongs, you know, like the gamelan gong orchestras of Indonesia. I
Maybe
think
they really are hearing Krishna's flute playing. He's calling to them from deep within.
who can say, dear?
Who can say?
You know,
Yeah.
well, consciousness is one, it is primary, it is not plural. So you can hear Krishna playing in the Jagadamba Grove of Vrindavan. Anything else? Okay. And the name perpetually uttered within it will be like a gentle plucking at your sleeve, demanding and finally recapturing your attention. In India, when a disciple comes to his teacher for initiation, he is given what is called a mantram. The mantram consists of one or more holy names which the disciple is to repeat and meditate upon throughout the rest of his life. It is regarded as very private and very sacred, the essence, as it were, of the teacher's instructions to that particular disciple, and the seed within which spiritual vision is passed down from one generation to another. Now, once again, what the Swami is saying, he asserted, is literally true. If you take initiation in the Ramakrishna lineage, you receive a Ramakrishna mantra. The seed within which spiritual wisdom is passed down from one generation to another. The understanding is that Sri Ramakrishna came, did what he did, his Leela, his divine play, for no other reason than to gather together all of the spiritual treasures of Dharma and of realization, put them in a treasure box, as Brahmananda put it, and pass that treasure box down to the next generation through his disciples. And so when Swami Sarvadevananda came and offered initiation to 9 people as he was here on the 18th of May, he was opening that treasure box and giving them Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual treasure in the form of mantra and instructions. Swami Brahmananda, in reference to this, said, "People come to me and I receive them. I have the keys to the treasure box, but what do they ask me for? Potatoes, eggplants, and onions." By that he meant things of the world. They pray that he will use his spiritual power to help their son pass his university examination, or their daughter get a more favorable marriage, or something of that kind. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No. But his gentle lament was that they didn't ask for the treasure box. They didn't ask for what's in the treasure box. So it's 11:59 or 12:59. We started a little late, so we can run on a little late as it pleases yourselves. Is there anything else anyone would like to contribute, particularly about what is, if you wish, about what it is that is passed down? Anything at all from anyone? From your own experience with what was passed on to you in your initiation and your use of what was given in initiation, or anything else associated with what we've been discussing? All right, I'll just say a little something from my own experience. Swami Prabhupada, of course, was pretty much recognized as an illumined soul. That he had been given that illumination by Brahmananda, his master, his teacher, but then he had made it his own. He had made it his own because we cannot give away with that which we do not own. So he was giving it away with both hands at the time of his life. He may have been doing it all along, but certainly was. I came to him 3.5 years before he passed away. Not only did he give me instruction, which included a mantra, but he also gave blessings, not just to me, to everyone who visited him, and especially in the experience of so many of us, when we would go with him on his walks. He walked right up until the very end of his life, until he could no longer do it physically. He walked a little bit in the morning and in the afternoon. At the end of the walk, everyone would line up, and he would do this. He would take the 3 fingers of his right hand, and he would press them against your forehead. Very like Swami Sarvadevananda putting the relics on the people's heads who were here the day of people's initiation. But this was done day after day after day after day. This was the power of what was contained in Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual treasure box. I was told, in the beginning, of course, I didn't know anything. I just was very attracted to the Swami. And his right-hand person, Pravrajaka Nun, Pravrajaka Anandaprana, said, "You have no idea how many lifetimes dreams are being battered away by what he does. How many samskaras? She didn't say this word at that time, I wouldn't have understood it. But how many samskaras were being put to sleep, so to speak, rendered dormant by the Swami's touch. And I noticed that when he did this, a tear would come from the corner of his right eye down his cheek. He was filled with bliss and passing that bliss along. So this is not some metaphor, this treasure box. It is a way of talking about a very profound truth that can be communicated. Any comments, questions from anyone? Well, tomorrow morning, for those of you who come to the chapel for the talk, and then afterwards come into the monastery, I will have a special blessing from Swami Prabhupada for those people. Very special indeed. So I hope you can come tomorrow morning. If you can't, the thought will be going out to you. As the object of this blessing is being held, the thought will be going out to you of your receiving this blessing also.
You're talking about tomorrow morning's 11 a.m. talk?
Yeah, here in the chapel. The title of the talk is a little bit comical. It is a wry remark, a wry question asked by Swami Krishnananda. Krishnananda was the personal assistant to Swami Prabhupada, his sevak, and he washed the breakfast dishes every morning at the main sink. One morning, he was washing the dishes with his back to the monks who were behind him drying and putting away the dishes, and one of the monks began to grumble. And of course, when one person begins to grumble, it's like a contagion. The other monks began to join in and grumble. And Krishnananda, who was probably in his 50s or 60s at this time, older than these young men by some decade or so, decade or decades, he listened for a few moments, and then he turned very slowly. He was a very deliberate man of very few words. He turned slowly and looked very directly at the lead complainer, the one who had started the complaining, and he asked him, "Something wrong with your mantra?" In other words, he was trying to tell him that it would be much more auspicious than his grumbling if he would just repeat his mantra, knowing that that ultimately would resolve everything. The grumbling would do no good, some harm. The mantra would do only good. So that's the genesis of that title for tomorrow morning's talk, which is about the mantra. Something wrong with your mantra? Anything at all from anyone, dears? All right. Om asatoma satkamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amrutangamaya, avirmoiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Beloved Master, make it so. Peace and beneficence, peace and beneficence, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So, until tomorrow morning, for those of you who choose to join us then, may you have a wonderful rest of your day. May it be all those things that we just said: safe, healthy, cheerful, peaceful of mind. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. As they say in Mexico, hasta luego, until later, adios. Go with God.